Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of the Virtual Engagement Ideas Summit. And our special guest today is Kevin Carey. Hello, Kevin. How are you?
Hello, I'm
Hey.
doing well. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad you're here. I'm going to read you a quick bio over here from my other source, just to give context to how qualified you are to be here
Mm,
today,
mm.
right? Kevin Carey serves as the Director of Student Involvement at Illinois Wesleyan University. He has a Master of Arts in Student Affairs. Oh, sorry, Student Affairs Administration in Higher Education. That's a lot of words.
It's a lot.
A
Sahi.
lot of words. Yeah. But you went to Ball State University, which is a really cool school.
Chirp, chirp.
And you're working on your doctorate of education in educational policy, organization, and leadership. You're a hardworking person. Um,
I like reading and writing
yeah, you
and being
do.
in school.
Yeah. Thanks again for being here. I want to know about 4,300 acres of farm.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Yep.
So I grew up. So Bloomington is in Bloomington Normal is the
Uh-huh.
Twin Cities of
Yep.
Illinois, where I live and where Illinois Wesleyan is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I grew up just north of here, about an hour. And so growing up, this city was like the big town,
Yeah.
because I grew up in a town of 90 people.
Hmm.
And in Grundy County, where I grew up, and a couple other surrounding areas, we farm around 4,300 acres of land. It's a second generation family farm. We farm for other people. So we have landlords that we farm for. And then we have our own land that we own as a Carey family and farm. So corn and soybeans are our primary things that we harvest. And
Yeah.
so farming has been a huge part to my life and upbringing.
So
Um,
in your teens, or even maybe like earlier than that, were you riding the big combines?
I was riding them. I wasn't driving
You were
those.
driving them. Okay.
I was a terrible driver. Still
Okay.
am. So my dad didn't really let me touch much of the machinery. I got to drive the lawnmowers, pick up rocks in the field, use the weed whacker, put the beans in the planter, and then I got to burn the bags in the ditch after I put the beans in there. So I was a pyro.
Oh,
Uh,
that's good. You get to light stuff on fire on your own property, though. So,
100%, yes. And then
100%.
I had a bucket of water just in case I got out of control.
Right. 2009 is a big year for you. 2009 is the year that you won Grand Champion Steer. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so my family also was into the cattle showing circuit. So my cousin Eric, on my mom's side of the family, so my mom's sister's son, had shown cattle his whole life, and so we have been in the cattle showing business for a long time, and my cousin's still showing. So I won our state fair here in Illinois, Grand Champion Steer Show, which is one of the 5 major species shows you can win at the fair. Um, and so I got to go to the Governor Sale Champions that Tuesday following my win on that Saturday and sell my steer for $50,100 to the McDonald's Corporation.
Oh man, that's amazing. So you got paid $50,100 for your Grand Champion Steer.
Yes, and 5% went to 4-H and 5% went to FFA for
That's really
scholarships.
cool. That's really cool. Now, so that you said that was just one of the five animal, because we're learning a lot today. We're not just going to learn about higher ed.
No,
We're,
no.
look, we may have viewers in Atlanta, Los Angeles, Chicago who have never been on a farm. So we want to educate uh,
Yes.
and inform. What are the other four animal groups that are not steer?
Yep. So you've got your hogs, your pigs, your sheep, your goats, your rabbits, and your chickens.
Oh, no kidding.
Yes.
That's cool that rabbits got their own category. I didn't know that. Like,
Grand champion meat pen of 3. So there's 3 rabbits in one. They get judged as a trio,
no kidding.
and they're judged as like meat pen fryer is what they're called, as a showcase of rabbit.
No kidding. I didn't. Culturally, rabbit is not something that we consume as much as chicken. So
Correct.
where's the market for rabbit? Is it export?
It is.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, the showing circuit of rabbit isn't for meat. It is indeed the breeding and
Yeah.
the the species specific of bucks and does, so female male rabbits.
Amazing. Amazing. It's been a great interview, Kevin. Thank
Yeah,
you for your
that's
time.
it's a minute with Farmer Kevin here. I look just like a farmer. I know you're just like, wow, this is fitting, so fitting. This 120-pound soaking wet man and his farming.
It's just awesome. We know so much about you now. Oh wait, I know we want to get into content, but I also want to talk about how you lit your head on fire with a sock.
Oh my gosh. So my sweet Papa George, that's my mom's dad. My Aunt Barbie, my mom's sister, babysat me a couple days a week, and my grandpa was always there. Now, backstory, grandpa lost his license at 21. He did not properly learn to not drive after been drinking, and spent the rest of his life being a great farmhand at my aunt and uncle's house. So towards the end of his life, I would go out and play with him, and we used to rake the leaves up and start them on fire.
Yeah.
Well, my cousin Eric must have left a sock when he was carrying in his laundry from his car, and my grandpa was like an encourager of me no matter what. And so I put the sock on the end of a stick, and I was like, I lit it on fire as we were burning the leaves, and I was marching around with it, and it fell just ever so delicately on my head here and right across my eyebrow. And my grandpa got it off, took me inside, and my aunt, who was cutting hair at the time, was like, "Ah, what happened to your hair? I could tell your mom I gave you a bad haircut, but that eyebrow," because I burnt all my eyebrow off.
Oh my gosh.
And my grandpa said I couldn't tell the little bugger no. And so I had a half a burnt hair and a missing eyebrow for most of my first grade
Oh,
fall.
that's so great. And how did those experiences prepare you for a life in higher ed?
Crisis management, let me tell you.
Yeah.
We do
Yeah.
fire drills with our fraternities and sororities all the time. So,
Right.
um,
Right. That's awesome.
yeah.
All right, so let's get down to business. What have been some of your, because we really want to talk about how we are effectively working in this era, in this chapter of our lives. And one of the things that I think that I really admire about you is your strategy, your process, how organized you are, and how that, tell me about that.
Yeah. So small liberal arts colleges, I think, have always been my favorite niche. And the reason why is that collaborative energy right now is so critical. Um, I can't walk through my role here at Illinois Wesleyan without interfacing with a variety of departments. And so our admissions friends, our marketing department, our faculty, our physical plant, we have to know and build relationships with everybody. And I think something that's happened during this, at least from the staff perspective, is that those relationships have become almost more authentic because we're having to work through some really tough decisions. So today has been, how do we feed our students who are isolated for 2 days after they get a test on campus in their facilities? So working with our Sodexo partners, working with our residence life friends, working with our student leaders in those homes and in those residential facilities. It's a labor of love, but it's also like pivoting on this crux of collaboration. And so I think the nature by which we operate right now is so relationship driven towards that collaboration that it keeps us motivated to move forward. And I
Yeah.
can't harp on that enough. And that's not just specific to the small liberal arts college, but it's what I know. It's because
Yeah.
I'm an alum of this institution. It's what I learned here. And so I
Yeah.
feel like I
Yeah.
have to deliver it in the staff role that I'm in.
Right. And do you think that a year ago you were as collaborative as you are this summer?
I I know is the answer to that.
Yeah.
I was collaborative in a different way. Um, and it was because we're expected to always collaborate in whatever you want to call normal times,
Yeah.
um, in an easier era. Um, but I think it's more omnipresent. It's becoming like just a part of the daily experience, right? It's just it is it's almost routine at this point because it's just what we do in this environment.
You mean connecting with your colleagues?
Yes, and the collaborative energy is just expected, and it's becoming
Yeah.
a routine.
So, what would you say to somebody who's on a campus where they don't feel like they're getting that sort of collaboration? How would you start that?
One of the first things that I was told when I started here was just build relationships, right? Share as much as you would like to about who you are, and your professional style and approach. And I think I start every new year after an evaluation or after a new academic year.
Yeah.
I make a new list of new relationships that I need to form,
Oh, great.
and I keep them over here. They're on my post-it note right here.
No kidding.
And they're like my reminders to just show up and be human with them. Like stop by their office if I can. It's a little different right now.
Yeah.
Or drop them a chat or write them a little snail mail just to make them feel like you see the work they're doing, you're validating what they're doing, because in time that allows us to work together towards a common goal for our students or
Yeah.
our alumni or our community.
Yeah. You are very purposefully building connections,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, I don't want to say methodically, but it is like there's a method to it, but it's not in any way. You're not networking you're not networking for any other purpose other than to help them and to help the students ultimately,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's great advice to anybody out there who feels like I don't want to just stop by somebody if I have nothing to talk about with them. Like, no, you do, right? You actually do.
You
You
do.
don't-
You really do.
yeah.
Yeah.
You want to build a relationship before you guys have to put out a fire together.
Yep. And I want to say this, like, let
Yeah.
me just make the caveat. I'm not at all the expert of collaboration and relationships. And sometimes I don't do it well, or I don't do it with the best intentions, or it doesn't pan out. And that, like, honestly, for those also watching that like have tried this and it doesn't work, like try and try and try again is just my philosophy with that, because I think some
Yeah.
people just aren't going to be receptive to that. And that's okay. There's always more relationships to find together.
Yeah. Um, you said something to me also in a previous conversation that it's really important to acknowledge in our professional lives what we can and what we cannot do.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
So there are, I, I will own this openly. I used to live to work,
Hmm.
especially in my first few years of working in student
Yeah.
affairs. And I think really my last year at Wittenberg, which was a year and a half ago now, I started to pivot to this work to live philosophy that like my job is important and I care about it and it's a vital part of my identity. But I
Hmm.
just needed to learn to pivot that life has so much more to offer that I know that I want to pour into. So that's my fiance, that's home ownership, that's my doctoral degree, that's my mom and my dad and cousins I haven't seen. And that balance is so hard and it's so hard to learn. And it took me finally the opportunity to really hone in on my own well-being. And I've always gone to counseling, and so I knew we were going to talk about this a little bit.
Uh-huh.
I had a traumatic experience in undergrad. I had a fraternity brother pass away at a social event,
Yeah.
and managed crisis in the moment with that, and my brother's crisis and guest crisis, and it really changed who I was and how I walked through life. And that's
Hmm.
when I went to counseling the first time, and it's been a part of my lived experience and something I'm really I talk a lot about because I want it to be
Yeah.
normalized.
Yeah.
Um, but I realized I still wasn't getting what I needed from that, and so during this pandemic, I realized that my anxiety was just not something I could cope with, and I needed to seek medication.
Hmm.
Um, and it's not something that I was a little stubborn too,
Yeah.
um, but I did it anyways because I know I needed to. Um, because I still want to work to live. I don't want my life to be just my job. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying there's not people who can do that beautifully and
Right.
enjoy that, and that's what's important to them, and that doesn't dismiss that. But I needed to make the pivot, and I couldn't do the pivot without my counselor, and I couldn't do it without a little bit of anxiety medication for how I was having the pendulum swing back and forth with that. And so
Right.
it's hard to acknowledge that sometimes, but
No,
um,
but it's really thank you for saying that because with a couple other counselors who I've interviewed, we've talked about work-life balance, and sometimes we need somebody else to help us get there,
oh yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like we hear it all the time. Yeah, you gotta have very specific times when you're not gonna email after 6 p.m. You're going to work. Work is work and home is home. And it's even harder now. I mean, you're in your office, but there's thousands and thousands of folks out there who are still working from the kitchen, the living room, the bedroom.
Yes.
And but you saying and sharing your anxiety, did the anxiety, was it work centric anxiety?
Yes. And I am the first to tell anybody I'm the worst person at saying no.
Yeah,
I volunteer too much with things. I take on projects I probably don't need to at work. You know, home ownership and planning a wedding at the same time on top of a pandemic is like event planning in your personal life. And when you already do that at work, it feels like all you do is plan events.
yeah,
And so it was getting a little bit chaotic, and I couldn't just be happy and rest. I
yeah.
mean, I could be happy, but I couldn't rest. And then if I rested, I wasn't happy with just sitting and being idle. And so I had to find a way to navigate that dichotomy, right?
Yeah.
And so I'd say it was a little bit of both. I never think that the anxiety that I have comes from one central place.
Okay.
It's definitely intersectional at
Yeah.
best.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But are you now more able to sit without thinking that you have to do something, right? That I think that's mindfulness is the word that I go to.
Yes. I will tell you, and this is a tip for anyone watching, and I hope that whoever's watching has a good relationship with their supervisor.
Hmm.
My supervisor is an exceptional role model and listener and realistic advocate of our staff,
Hmm.
and of our office staff
Yeah.
as he's our supervisor of our office area.
Yeah.
And just having that honest conversation with him about like, Brandon, these boundaries are hard for me, and like I
Yeah.
don't know how to say no, and I don't know what I don't know. And so help me navigate that. So if I can talk to you before jumping into a decision, or if I can talk to you before saying yes to something, or if I want to say no, can you support me in that no? And just having that open conversation has made it feel so much better about like, hey, Brandon, I'm just not going to be able to get to this right now. Or, hey, at 6 o'clock tonight, like I got to just let it go. I got to turn my
Yeah.
email off, and it being okay, and it not feeling judgy or it not feeling heavy just makes everything so much better. And so that relationship, back to collaboration and relationship, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And getting to know somebody and taking the time
Right.
makes that feel so much less pressure filled. So
But in the building of the relationship, though, you're sharing your own vulnerability when you're getting to know somebody. So let's talk about meeting somebody for the first time,
yeah.
right? Let's talk about meeting somebody for the first time and how to build connections with students and how to build connection with colleagues,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Is it that you approach them and you ask 50 questions about them?
Or is it an equal balance?
Yeah. Or is it that you say, and a little give and take and share of yourself and share of your successes and your challenges and
Mhm.
your honesty in our conversation. I mean, I've been on committees with you, and I didn't know about the farm. I didn't know about the anxiety, right? I
Mhm.
only learned that, and those bring me closer to you, right?
Yes. Yes.
And that's an example of you sharing of yourself in this conversation allows for everybody who might hear this conversation to get to know you better.
Mhm.
To,
And one thing that I think right now that's really
yeah,
important, and so diversity, equity, and inclusion central to the college campus environment, ever more so right now, given the national climate and global
yeah,
climate. I don't want to erase what's happening globally that
yeah,
involves diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we talk about this call in to call out process. So I think about how when we are having a conversation with somebody and they say something that doesn't feel um, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Appropriate, it's discriminatory, it's microaggressive. Sometimes I call in like, that's a really great phrase. Like I used to say like, insert that here. And then I realized how much of an impact that had on people that identified as blank. So I'm going to encourage you to think about that next time you want to say that. I think about that same philosophy for just our everyday getting to know one another.
Right.
Sometimes someone says something really vulnerable to you. So if I'm having a conversation with you, right, we're talking, then I drop like, I have really bad anxiety and I'm just really struggling with like all this work and I don't know how to overcome it. You may choose to call in and be like, I felt that way before. We're empathizing, right?
Yeah.
And
Right.
then calling it back out and saying like, so what are you doing to take care of yourself? Like,
Yeah.
what are those things that do help you? Or where is this coming from? That just builds such an authentic, real connection with people that I don't think call in, call out is just a tactic or a
Right.
tenet
Right.
or
Right.
a
No,
part
no,
of,
yeah. What a great idea. Call in, call out. Right.
yep. And the second piece to that I think is really important in relationships and that you were talking about do I ask people 50 questions or do I ask, how do I self-preserve? So how do I not have to share everything or
Mhm.
spill everything or also taking up space, right? Like I'm a white male. I don't need to take up space when I'm in a meeting with a population of women or people of color. I have to acknowledge my identities in that space. So what do I choose to share and what do I self-preserve for a
Mhm.
future conversation,
Right.
right? So I'm not taking up all the space to share with you and share with others everything about
Right.
me or my thoughts or my opinions. I'm
Yeah.
keeping
Yeah.
some of that for a later conversation.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's great. I one of the things that's hard for humans and something that we grow into is that you tell me a story and I immediately want to tell you about my version of your story, right? But I forget to call out, right? I
Yeah.
call in so let me practice with you. Let
Yes.
me practice with you. The story about the sock on your head.
Yes.
Okay, I also lit a sock on fire when I was a 16-year-old camp counselor, a counselor in training, in front of a group of 12 campers because I spilled kerosene in a cabin and I thought, oh, I'll wipe it up with this sock. And then I wasn't able to wipe it all up. So I was like, well, how to get kerosene off of a wooden floor? Light it on fire, right? So I lit it on fire and the sock caught fire as well in front of a group of 12-year-olds who were under my watch, right? Immediately I ran after I put it out and it was safe, but I ran to the director and I told them first about it before they heard from someone else. Now, so I just called in, right?
Yes.
So I called in. Now I'm going to say, how did you get over your fear of flame?
Right.
Right?
This is
That's
like
my call out.
yeah,
Okay.
such a call out. Yeah. It's like I had that experience too. Follow up question to put it back onto you. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
yeah, I think in those relationships with people, we do listen to respond way too much
Right.
versus listening to hear.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So where I'm already thinking about your story and how it's going to help me tell my story, right? I'm still so like that's what you mean. Like we're already thinking about our response without listening to the yeah, and that is something that interviewers, and this is something that I've learned. It's just in the last couple of weeks of doing these conversations. I'll share it with you, and I don't think I've shared this on a recording yet, but I wrote myself a note.
Okay. Shut up.
So when I ask a question, shut up. That note is for me. That note is for me.
I should probably put that note. I mean, and I think that's what's one of the things that sucks about right now.
Uh-huh.
Sucks. I think I can say that. Can I say sucks in an
You can
interview?
say sucks. Yeah, we were. This is a professional conversation.
Great. Because we're trying to figure out things in a very fast-paced environment with changing things every day, we are all listening to respond with our ideas. And I see students doing that. Like
Yeah,
I see our campus activities board students, like you're trying to coach them and guide them they return to campus, right, throughout this summer. And some people who are listening might be feeling that same way if you advise the campus activities board. And you're giving them things to think about, but they're all operating on like their own wavelength still because they haven't been brought back together. And that virtual being together is just not the same as being even physically distant in the same space together. And I'm watching them just listen and then like not respond and then just share their own idea that has nothing to do with the conversation that we just had. And it's like, okay, friends, we got to focus on one topic right now, and we're
yeah,
going to only ask questions about that topic. and then we'll keep time, and then we'll move on to the next one. So like trying to round robin through the things that I know they want to talk about, but making sure they stay focused in listening to something that's really important to one of the officers or another officer, so that they're asking questions to make that person feel validated and that they can move forward with that task.
All right.
It took me a long time to figure out that that's what the struggle was this summer as we were meeting a few times. And I think I started to pinpoint like, oh, it's because they all think they're operating on different tasks, but collectively we're all trying to do the same thing. So let's give everybody their moment. You can only ask questions or affirm something, and then we'll rotate through. And so submitting previous to the meeting questions, topics, and then giving time for each of them, rolling through.
Yeah.
And it's just been a good strategy to kind of keep everybody listening to hear and learn versus just to respond about something else that you're working on.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Setting a time for listening.
Yes.
Setting a time for listening.
Yes. And I hope that we will, again, just like how we have learned that collaboration is just becoming routine, that will become the routine and we won't have to set time anymore.
Right.
Very methods driven.
Right. That was my computer.
Oh, good. I was looking down.
Yeah, no. This is the beauty. So I very purposefully am using my computer microphone, my computer camera as an example to all of the advisors out there who see professional presenters, or that this is what you need to engage with students. This is what you need to engage with colleagues. We have it already.
Yes.
Right? And so I really want to, I want to share that as much as possible. Like you're only limited by your willingness to jump in to this space, you know?
There's a lot of ways that could go. You're only say that one more time to me.
I don't think I've said it before, so maybe let me have to play. You're only limited by your willingness to jump into this space. You're only limited by your willingness, or you're only limited. Your limitations are your own.
Your limitations are your own. You're limited to your willingness to jump in. Gosh, that is philosophical. Holy moly, Batman. Our vice president of student affairs has called me 3 times, Jason, and I feel like something is wrong.
Oh, in this conference while we've been here? All right, so let's do this. You go answer that call because you are going to put out some fires with flames because you're not scared of them anymore, right?
Yes.
You never were. You never were.
Yes. Yes.
All right, officially goodbye. No, go. This is higher ed. You're amazing. All right.